Welcome to Caregiver SOS On Air, presented by the WellMed Charitable Foundation, with nationally known gerontologist Carol Zernail and award-winning veteran broadcaster Ron Aaron. This program provides health, wellness, and other information for caregivers who are vital to the health and well-being of so many people across our country. And now, here are your hosts, Ron Aaron and Carol Zernail.
Well, hello there, and welcome to the award-winning Caregiver SOS On Air. I'm Ron Aaron. We are delighted to have you with us. Our co-host, Carol Zernail, is with us. Carol, as many of you know, has a master's degree in social gerontology, 30-plus years experience in the field. She's co-chair of the Raise Family Caregiving Advisory Council and executive director of the WellMed Charitable Foundation. And Carol, this is a wonderful topic, talking about understanding real-life challenges of dementia symptoms.
Well, how many of us have had a friend or a relative with dementia? Many of the caregivers listening, and it's that symptom management, right? It's that those behaviors, and if you don't understand them, they're twice as hard to deal with. So very timely.
Well, let's take a moment and introduce our very special guest. Laura Wayman has over 2 decades experience and a strong dedication to quality aging. She holds an associate degree in gerontology and is a certified social services designee. She has an innovative approach to the caregiving process, giving valuable insights into how caregivers can enhance and even enjoy their relationship with their loved ones, even when the loved ones are struggling with dementia. And it's an area in which she's specialized over the years. So, Laura, first of all, welcome to Caregiver SOS On Air. What brought you to this field?
Well, let me tell you a short little story here. I want to tell you a short little story about a young woman many, many years ago named Peggy, who met her husband at a square dance. They began to date, fell in love, got married, had a wonderful long married life, had several children during that time. While they were raising their own biological children, this young woman whose name is Peggy, her husband's name is Jack, they had begun to take care of also foster children because Peggy was a true caregiver at heart. She found she was really, really good at finding ways to care for children and successfully raise them. So throughout her married life, while Jack was going off to work, Peggy had raised over 20 foster children alongside of her biological children. Now, they had this wonderful long married life together, but they were looking forward, like many of us, to their retirement dream. And as they continued to get these children raised and out of the house, they began to plan for their retirement, that they had talked about all their married life. They were getting older, ready to retire. So as soon as all those children were raised, and Peggy did such a great job with all of that, they sold their house, bought a little RV, and began to travel. But unfortunately, just about at the same time when Jack's health began to fail, he began to show signs and symptoms of dementia, which dementia symptoms that come on in this retirement life, they are a life-changing event. Peggy knew as she started to see her husband, her lovely spouse, Jack, begin to fail with these dementia symptoms, she began to really get concerned. She had seen many of her friends caring for someone with dementia symptoms and how difficult it was. And as a caregiver, her perspective, she was going to be concerned about that. And so she gathered Jack up just as they were beginning to really enjoy this retirement lifestyle, took him to their physician, and doggone it if he wasn't diagnosed with Alzheimer's as a cause of his dementia symptoms. Peggy knew that was progressive. She knew that she couldn't change it. And she also knew as a caregiver that she was going to have to change their lifestyle. She was going to become his full-time caregiver. So they sold their house on wheels, bought a little house in a small little town next to some friends of theirs. And Peggy thought she was going to just be able to take care of him. She took care of all those kids, right? But as Jack continued to decline, Peggy began to struggle caring for him. He began to have really challenging really challenging symptoms like wandering. So she couldn't take her eyes off of him for a minute. Or he was out the door and down the road. She even had to call the police to come and fetch him and bring him home. She began to struggle when he wasn't sleeping. She was there with him by herself, and there was no one to help her. She was exhausted. So she began to talk with her family long distance. They're all long distance. They can't help her. So she began to talk with them, and they were concerned because she was exhausted, and it wasn't really all that long of a time, just a couple of years, and she was really, really struggling caring for Jack. And there was no one where she was to help her. Even though she began to reach out to family, honestly, it was too late, because by the time she started asking for their help, and they were long distance, couldn't help her physically, even emotional support. One night, Jack and Peggy are home alone. The family is not there close by. Peggy had made Jack a wonderful dinner, but as she sat down to have dinner with Jack, Peggy suffered a massive heart attack. Jack's dementia was so far advanced, he didn't know that it was an emergency to help her. So by the time help was summoned, Peggy was gone. This is my personal story. This is my mother, Peggy. I had to learn through all trial by fire that 68% of the time, if that caregiver, especially a same-age spouse, does not ask for help on this dementia care journey, this is so impactful, so life-changing, that often that caregiver gets sick and goes first.
Now hold that thought. I'm going to come right back to you. I want to let folks know who just joined us. You're listening to the award-winning Caregiver SOS on air. I'm Ron Aaron, along with our co-host, Carol Zernail. Laura Wayman just shared an incredible story. We're talking about dementia and how she became a dementia whisperer. Thank you for joining us, and I want to come back now to Laura. So there you were, long distance. You find out your mother dies, your dad is struggling with very, very severe dementia. What did Laura do?
Well, the whole family converged, and like I said, this was trial by fire. We had no inclination how challenging this was. Of course, we were living in the prime of our adult life and careers and education, raising our own families. And we weren't around anybody who had dementia symptoms or anybody that was caring for someone. And my mom was covering. She was really, not really letting us know how challenging this was, because she didn't really understand how these challenges were exhibiting. Most of us, when we hear a diagnosis of dementia, which is not even a diagnosis, but if you hear that diagnosis, what's the first thing we think about? We think about memory loss. That was not something that my mom was really facing, was memory loss. It was these other real life dementia symptoms, like wandering or not being able to do tasks that came on autopilot to someone who did that 2 years ago without even having to think about it. It is that loss of executive brain function. And because my mom did not understand that, she was not given the resources or even know where to go for the help at that time. This was 25 years ago, and we're getting better, but we still need to be more dementia aware. We need to understand dementia in a very deep way, what it is, how it is actually affecting people, so that we can take those individuals and have a better care plan early rather than later, and waiting for memory loss, which might not develop until many of these other symptoms have taken such a toll.
Now, Laura, as I listen to you, we see each other on Zoom. My co-host, Carol Zernail, I can see her shaking her head. Yes, yes, yes. Rings a bell or two with you, Carol.
Well, it's true that, the wandering, the constant watching, the not having 2 seconds to yourself, all of those I'll call them problem behaviors, but they're behaviors, right? They're the Alzheimer's disruptive behaviors. It's a cumulative effect between lack of sleep, the energy it takes to keep up with everything, and then the stress on top of all of this, fight uphill. So what a story, Laura, and for a family, and it's probably not every family suffers the loss the way that you did, which is so awful. But those disruptive behaviors, I'm sure there are a lot of people listening who absolutely understand what you're saying.
So what did you do? You and your family, your siblings get together and...
Well, we tried to get a plan, which, because we were not dementia aware at the time, and what I mean by dementia aware is really understanding how to engage and communicate, because you understand, you have a deeper understanding about what's actually going on in that person's brain. We were far from that at that time. And so we had this plan that, okay, well, I'll take Dad for 3 months, and then you can take Dad for 3 months, which was exactly the opposite of what was going to work, because all we did was try and force him to use his broken thinker, that's what I call it, his broken thinker, to think and process of all these new things when his broken thinker can't do that anymore.
All right, so hold that thought. You uproot him, you bring him into a strange setting and keep moving him around like the ping pong on a ping pong table. We're going to pick up the story in just a moment. Carol Zernail, our co-host, is here. Laura Wayman just shared a unfamiliar story to many of us, but familiar to a whole lot of folks across this country dealing with a loved one with dementia. And she slowly becomes the Dementia Whisperer. Stick with us. We'll be right back. Well, thank you so much for listening to Caregiver SOS On Air. We're delighted to have you with us. We come to you every week with a discussion of an issue, a problem, some accomplishments involved in caregiving with more than 60 million caregivers across this country, but most thinking they are the Lone Rangers. We try to bring you the latest information and help that can make that job easier and more manageable. Caregiver SOS On Air takes a look at trends across this country. We provide tips on how to be a better caregiver, and most importantly, where you can go for help. On Caregiver SOS On Air, we try to give you what you need to make that caregiving manageable and to provide you with the help that can make your life easier. I'm Ron Aaron. Carol Zernail and I are delighted to co-host this program, and we're thrilled you've joined us on the award-winning Caregiver SOS On Air podcast, available everywhere, brought to you by WellMed Charitable Foundation.
Hello, friend. Hello, friend. Really good to see you once again. Hello, friend. Hello, friend. Really good to see you once again.
Well, thank you so much for sticking with us right here on the award-winning Caregiver SOS On Air. Our podcast available wherever you listen to your podcast, and we're also on the radio in several cities in Texas and Florida as well. I'm Ron Aaron. Our co-host Carol Zernail is with us, and Laura Wayman, the Dementia Whisperer, is with us as well, talking about her own personal experience. And if you have been with us, you heard the story about her dad and her mom, and Carol mentioned off the air, it sounds like the Gene Hackman story. And you were saying to us that had they only been dementia aware, Laura Wayman, a lot of that could have been avoided.
Absolutely. Had neighbors been dementia aware, had even the medical community is not always dementia aware. You know, the medical community is still kind of stuck in this rut of all of their cognitive tests are testing for memory loss. And that's not what we need. The real problem is testing for this loss of executive brain function. Now, memory loss can occur, but often it happens later. And so we need to revamp what real life dementia symptoms look like. You know, that loss of ability to, maybe they always could balance the checkbook in the past, but now what used to take them 45 minutes to balance the checkbook, now it's 2 or 3 weeks, or they just can't get it done. That processing, that learned brain function of thinking that through is no longer available in their brain. And
How
so they
common?
just simply can't do it.
How common is wandering? I'm thinking about in my own family, my dad developed dementia. And one weekend, we all met in Annapolis, Maryland, as my son was graduating from the U.S. Naval Academy. My mom and dad from Cleveland checked into the hotel, and within minutes, I got a call from the front desk. We think we have your dad. He'd walked out of the room and wandered, and they found him, fortunately, and figured out, because we looked alike, who he belonged to, and reunited us. And I asked my mom, is he wandering? And she said, well, occasionally he'll kind of walk out the door. Turns out to be pretty common, doesn't it?
Yes, because let's think this next step. Dementia symptoms occur when an illness or disease or a stroke or a brain trauma is causing that person to lose executive function, the ability to process and think things through, to make sense of the world around us. But what remains with dementia symptoms is the feelings and emotions that drive our behaviors. And often memories from the past are still in that person's brain because they stored those in their brain when their brain was still healthy. They can no longer store current memories, but they can store memories of the past and how those memories make them feel, because that's also attached. So when someone's wandering, often they're trying to get to a place, probably memories of the past, their childhood home, some place where they felt loved, safe, secure, and valued. They're trying to get there because when the executive function is gone, they can no longer feel those things when they're experiencing something they can't understand, like a new place, like a hotel room. That doesn't feel like home to them because the symbol of home and the feelings are based in those past memories.
Like
so
your
your
dad being shuffled from kid to kid.
Yeah, exactly. So what was happening is we were making him feel, my dad, feel insecure and not safe and not loved, even though that's what we were trying to do, because his brain was overloaded with information he couldn't process. So his brain would automatically try and protect him. He'd go back to those feelings of love and safety and security that were stored with his memories of the past. And so when someone's wandering, they're not trying to get to a place. They're trying to get to those feelings. So as a dementia-aware individual, we can help them feel safe and loved and secure by giving them those feelings in the moment. So what I do is if I've been an executive director in dementia care. And so what I taught my staff to do was give them the feelings, talk to the feelings. So if we had someone who wanted to go home, we wouldn't say, no, you live here. That just sounds like blah, blah, blah to them. That's something they can't process. We say, of course, home is such a great place. And when I'm with you, you make me feel safe. So what did we just give them? The feeling that they want in that moment. Can they store that? Nope, but we can give them the feeling in the moment. So we have to keep doing that for them. Think for them. Give them those feelings. Join them.
Carol?
So I'm curious, Laura, for maybe new caregivers that are just getting on this road with dementia. What are I've heard you talk about, giving them the feeling, but what do you tell people right out of the gate? What are the top things that come to mind that they really need to know?
Well, what they need to know is to learn as much as they can about where their loved one is in that moment. So what I usually suggest, if you start to see these changes in behavior, they're not able to balance the checkbook. They can still drive, but now they're having trouble with a left turn because that takes too much processing. They can make a right turn, but it's too much to do a left turn. Some of these changes where you're seeing gaps in processing, start to journal that. because that's what's going to help us make a customized plan. Because everyone has different dementia symptoms because everyone's brain is so different. We've all learned and have different stacks of executive function. And so when someone gets a cause of dementia symptoms, you can't have dementia, but you can have one of these illnesses or diseases. For example, Alzheimer's is the leading cause of dementia symptoms. Then you don't actually have dementia. You have dementia symptoms caused by Alzheimer's. So a diagnosis of just dementia is not enough information. You have to know the cause, okay? But there's millions of different dementia symptoms based on where that cause is in the brain with the loss. And so everybody is different. If you've met one person with dementia symptoms, you've only met one person with dementia symptoms. That's why we have to, as dementia aware individuals, we have to continue to learn, to be fluid and flexible, to be observant, and to accept loss, but also accept that we can support what they still have.
So share
That's
with
being
us
dementia
some of
aware.
the real life challenges of dementia symptoms, knowing that not everyone is the same, but there is a sameness in the kind of symptoms you may see.
It really, a really easy way, well, I don't know if it's easy, but a simplified way maybe is to think of this as if a healthy brain is a solid block of cheddar cheese, and every time we learn something new, novel, and complex, we make more cheese. And we need cheese to do anything. We need to have learned to make cheese to drive a car or have relationships or go to a concert. Anything that we learn that's new, novel, and complex, in order for us to be able to use that, we process it and we make more cheese. We need lots of cheese. Think of if a dirty rat gets in our cheese, such as Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or a stroke, that dirty rat is in there and we don't have a rat trap to get it out, and it's a hungry dirty rat. So it's running around our healthy wheel of cheese, grabbing greedy bites and leaving holes until our cheese starts to look like Swiss cheese. So now I have Swiss cheese because I have Alzheimer's rat in my brain. Now I go to access this learned brain function, this cheese that I've established and used and need all my life. If I hit what's left, there's still cheese with Swiss cheese, then I'm going to function and look normal. But there's holes now. So when I hit those holes, my brain compensates by showing this loss in these different dementia symptoms. Like I said, driving a car, there's lots of cheese. We need lots of cheese to drive a car, right? Our brain has to do things. Our eyes have to process if the light turns red. What do? We have to send all these signals. Light turns red. We have to send a signal to our foot to change from the accelerator to the brake. And think about, like I said, a common thing that I see with driving is that someone early is still driving, but they can't make a left turn because there's other things they have to think about. Oncoming traffic, getting in a different lane, but they can still successfully make a right turn. So
Carol, we got about a minute left.
Yeah, but before we leave, I want to just kind of highlight, Laura, what I hear you saying that's really important, and that's that, all the dementia, everyone who has dementia is different, and that observing where those holes are that you were talking about, those holes in the cheese, is really going to inform you as an individual caregiver where you need to get support or where you need to have a plan B, because it's not going to work. And I love that you're talking about this fluid flexibility and going with it, that sort of meeting people where they are. So important, and I really appreciate that message that you're bringing to us.
So, Laura,
Absolutely.
for those who want to check you out and find out more, do you have a website they can go to?
I do. I have my website, www.laurawayman.com. And I have my my book, A Loving Approach to Dementia Care, published by Johns Hopkins University Press. It is in its third edition. And
Perfect.
secret, I'm just now working on the fourth edition.
I love it. I got to stop you there. We are flat out of time. But for folks who want to know more, go to her website. Thank you to Carol Zernail and to Laura Wayman. I'm Ron Aaron. Talk with you soon right here on Caregiver SOS On Air. The executive producer for Caregiver SOS On Air is Daniel Calderon. The producer is Sharice Pendleton. And the associate producer is Catherine Oglesby. We'll see you next week on Caregiver SOS On Air.
You've been listening to Caregiver SOS On Air, an exclusive presentation of the WellMed Charitable Foundation. We welcome emails with suggestions and comments on this program at radio@wellmed.net. Join co-hosts Carol Zernail and Ron Aaron next week for more on caregiving, improving the health and well-being of caregivers and their care recipients everywhere. For more on caregiving and podcasts of our programs, visit caregiversos.org.